Hey, welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. It's going to mostly be an audio broadcast that I just recorded a short while ago. I just wanted to take a moment to say hello, though. Everything's good. Let's get into it. Okay, we'll see each other again tomorrow. Hello and welcome to the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. Today is Thursday, February 15th, 2024. I've been doing a bit of a deep dive into Renewable Energy Certificates, also known as Renewable Energy Credits. If you have yet to become a member of Strongholders, which is our community on X, formerly known as Twitter, I'd encourage you to do so. There are some incredibly insightful and interesting and thought-provoking conversations that take place there, one of which happens to be about the topic of renewable energy credits. So the reason why I've been doing a bit of a deep dive into this subject, into this topic, is because I am not entirely sure if I understand some of the nuances of this market. Because, see, I'm under the impression that, to keep it super simple, Stronghold Digital Mining owns two mine waste to energy facilities, right? Scrubgrass in western Pennsylvania, Panther Creek in eastern Pennsylvania. The source of fuel for both facilities is mine waste. That is considered to be a renewable source of energy pursuant to, Pennsylvania law. And there are a number of reasons why that is the case, which are a bit beyond the scope of our conversation. Suffice it to say that as a result of generating electricity with mine waste as a fuel source, Stronghold Digital Mining has the opportunity to essentially create renewable energy certificates, otherwise known as credits. Now, 1 megawatt of electricity that's produced basically represents then one renewable energy credit. So to keep it super simple, if you had, let's say, Panther Creek were somehow just a 1 megawatt nameplate capacity facility, it produces 1 megawatt of electricity per hour. There are 24 hours in a day. Therefore, you would have 24 megawatts of electricity that were produced. And so then, hey, you'd say to yourself, okay, great, that's 24 renewable energy credits. Now, what I'm trying to figure out and to clarify is whether or not a renewable energy credit is basically given to an energy producer that then provides that electricity that's being generated to the grid. Okay? So in other words, is there a stipulation in the rules that to actually qualify for a renewable energy certificate or credit, right, in addition to the fuel source being one of the listed categories, right, that will qualify as a renewable source of energy, at least pursuant to Pennsylvania law? In addition to that, is there a requirement that the electricity generated be sold to the grid? Because, see, the thing that I'm wondering is, a lot of times we're utilizing the electricity that we generate at Scrubgrass and at Panther Creek. We're using it behind the meter. That electricity does not go out onto the grid, but rather is used internally to mine Bitcoin. Now, there's always going to be some modicum of electricity that is essentially sold to the grid because we need to stay connected to the grid for a variety of technical and logistical reasons that, again, are a little bit beyond the scope of our conversation today. So that's sort of the question, and that's what I'm trying to figure out and clarify, because, okay, it'll be awesome to hear that, hey, whether you use the electricity yourself behind the meter or if you sell it to the grid, in either case, For every 1 megawatt of electricity that's generated using a renewable source of fuel, well, you are then you qualify for a REC, right, or a renewable energy credit, which then, by the way, can be taken to market and sold. And REC prices have been going up to the point where the amount of money that can be generated by selling these renewable energy credits can be quite useful and quite lucrative. Now, that being said, the way this gets accounted for by Stronghold Digital Mining is to treat it as a contra expense to the fuel expense. Now, again, I know this sounds really convoluted, and it kind of sort of is in some ways. So when you look at our fuel expense, essentially you need to kind of say to yourself, well, there's an amount of money that essentially has been deducted from that fuel expense, and that money that was deducted is the renewable energy credit revenue that was generated during, for example, the 3-month period of time that is represented in a quarterly filing. Now, I've looked at the numbers and I've kind of done the math, and from time to time, it just doesn't quite make sense to me. It really just doesn't. And so I'm inclined to think that the potential exists for renewable energy credits to only really ever get generated when Stronghold Digital Mining, right, either at Scrubgrass or at Panther Creek, is basically diverting, either some or all of its electricity to the grid. Again, this is something I'm still researching, but if you have some clarity with regard to this, please do share your thoughts in the comments. But when you look at the amount of money that we're generating as a result of renewable energy credit sales, yes, it can be quite lucrative. But if you actually do the math and you say, well, hey, what if all of the electricity that Stronghold Digital Mining had the potential to basically generate, and, irrespective of how it's being used, either for mining Bitcoin or being sold to the grid, if you just kind of take a look at that number and you multiply it by, 24 hours in a day, 90 days in a quarter, and you just take the most relevant or, most relatively recent renewable energy credit price, right, that's publicly available, maybe I haven't done the math accurately enough, but it just seems as if though we have the potential to be generating a lot more money, right, than what we seem to be. As I said, this is a very, very early stage of this process. Some of this I'm relying on anecdotal, previous analysis, which again, unless you kind of do the math, with a fresh perspective, it's very, very easy, especially for me, just given the myriad of numbers I look at, to kind of get a little bit tripped up. So, but that's really a really big deal here because, there could come a point after the halving, and this is why it's so relevant. There could come a point after the Bitcoin, block reward halving where selling electricity to the grid may very well be on an intermittent basis throughout any given day, especially, depending on where the price of Bitcoin is and where hash prices are, we may be falling back to selling to the grid a bit more so. And so as a result of that, I'm just trying to figure out, hey, does that mean we're going to actually be generating more renewable energy credits, which then can be sold? And by doing so, yes, it's a contra expense to fuel, but essentially, it's sometimes easier to just think of it as a source of revenue, right? So that's kind of what I'm sort of doing a bit of a deep dive on. Again, I'd like to invite you, if you are not yet a member of the Strongholders community, it's completely free to join. You could just check it out, see what's going on. It's on Twitter, known as X. It's confusing. You have to kind of go to twitter.com to access the site. X.com seems to redirect to Twitter.com. I'm not sure I really understand what's going on there, but suffice it to say, I'm grateful for the fact that X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, has the functionality for this type of community to exist. So that is the question. If you have any insights or answers or any tips as to how to perhaps look at this, I welcome that. I have watched a number of interesting YouTube videos whereby people, this one person in particular living in the state of Maryland, has been able to actually sell, first and foremost, generate renewable energy certificates in the state of Maryland through the use of solar panels on his home. And then he kind of walks through the process that any power producer would walk through to register and to have, that energy that's being produced and presumably sent to the grid, tracked, and and here's an individual who's generating revenue through the sale of renewable energy certificates. So it's kind of, in a very small scale way, an interesting way to look at this. The number one question I'm still grappling with, I may even reach out to someone at PJM tomorrow to maybe for a little bit of context or color as it relates to this. Maybe it's very obvious, but I'm just missing it. But I want to try to figure out if, in the case of Stronghold, hey, when we're using the electricity behind the meter to mine Bitcoin, but yet we're generating that electricity using a renewable source of energy, right? Which in the case of mine waste qualifies as such here in Pennsylvania. Is that enough, right? The fact that we're just generating the electricity with mine waste, is that enough to qualify for a renewable energy credit? Or do we also have to be selling that electricity to the grid? And that's kind of where I'm hung up. And based on some of the math, based on the quarterly filings, I just get the impression that those numbers look a little bit light. And so I somehow think that it might be contingent on selling the electricity to the grid. So I want to clarify that. In any event, so hey, the price of Bitcoin has been holding pretty steady. It's up above $52,000 a coin. I saw that Stronghold Digital Mining, as well as all of the other publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies, had a phenomenal start to the trading session. But then as the trading session wore on, the stock price started to, fade away a little bit. But hey, you know what? This is the way it goes. You have some up days, you have some down days. Hopefully the up days outnumber the down days, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we really do see something of a re-rating of, Stronghold Digital Mining's stock price. Okay, my friend, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we will speak to each other again tomorrow.